So let's get started. To begin with, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Dave Williams. I'm a director at Reconome. We, for the last 7 years, have been building an IT asset disposal company with a difference, and that difference is to directly impact people who suffer from digital poverty, fairly redistributing corporate IT equipment to people who are less fortunate and can't afford a device or can't get connected. Um, and for the last 3 years, we've been partnered with Good Things Foundation. We launched the National Device Bank alongside the National Data Bank 3 years ago. Good Things Foundation have been a fantastic partner, and together we're really now starting to ramp up impact across the 7,000 charities that are in the Good Things Foundation network. So I'll just throw it to Natasha. She can introduce herself, and I'm sure she'll give a little bit of history on Good Things Foundation as well.
Thanks, Dave. Yes, I'm Natasha Early from Good Things Foundation, and we exist to help everyone to benefit from the digital world. We've been going since around 2010 in our current guise, and since then we've helped over 4 million people to get online. But we've not done that alone. Dave mentioned there 7,000 plus community organisations that are based all around the UK, and they're doing the real hard work. They're out in the communities supporting members of their community with all kinds of societal challenges, overcoming barriers, removing obstacles to them thriving. And one of those obstacles is getting online and accessing essential public services online, being able to feel safe and confident online. And those community organisations are who we're there for. So we have 3 core service offerings that those organisations can access. One of them is our data bank, which is a food bank for data through which we give out free SIM cards. The second is all of our learning resources. We've got a learning platform, Learn My Way. We've recently launched an AI gateway. So lots of tools that help people that are really at that early stages of getting online to access the support and the skills learning that they need to be able to successfully navigate the online world. And then finally, the National Device Bank, which is that idea that everybody should not only be able to have the skills and confidence to get online, but also removing barriers to affordability. So we distribute free gifted devices to people out in the community, and we'll share a bit more about that as we go through the presentation.
Fab. Thanks, Natasha. So just to quickly run through the agenda. So we'll just do a bit of an introduction on how surplus IT equipment is often overlooked as a lever really to achieve numerous kind of ESG goals for public sector and private sector. We'll then go into the kind of weeds here about how we transform that surplus tech into social and environmental impact. So we'll kind of run through a bit of a step-by-step guide, show you through the end-to-end process and how that's really going to impact those net zero and social value goals that you'll have. And then we'll get into the real bit that we're all here for, which is exactly how the end results are and who is being impacted and how much it really is changing the lives of the beneficiaries that we all serve. And then, as mentioned, yeah, we'll do a bit of a Q&A at the end. We'll switch the recording off so everyone feels comfortable to ask any question, no matter how big or small. So please take some notes while we're going through, and if there's anything that you'd like to ask, then we would welcome that conversation. Okay, so why is this sort of this IT asset disposal area in a business or in a public sector organization, why is it overlooked? I think there's been a very old way of doing things. Oftentimes used IT equipment, surplus IT equipment, it's kind of a set of assets that have already been used. It's kind of off the P&L. It's kind of really classed as a waste in an innovative way. It can really help with those net zero goals that are really starting to become very prevalent. That's the avoided carbon emissions, the prevented waste. That is all going to go towards your kind of scope 3 reporting. Obviously, the kind of waste reduction side of things with the circular economy. Again, this is becoming really prevalent. It's a really great thing that you'll want to tell your customers about. You'll definitely want to tell your residents about, the people who you serve if you're in public sector. And all of that is underpinned by solid governance. So you'll right the way through the kind of chain of custody and the end-to-end process. At each point, you're going to be updated with audits on what's happening to that equipment. All of the infosec and data erasure reporting will be provided. So that keeps all departments happy along the way. And then finally, obviously, the key piece of reporting is within the kind of impact that is created from that surplus equipment. And the environmental side is obviously really important, as I've just mentioned, but really why we exist is to go that step further and to generate social value from repurposing that equipment, or the proceeds that come from that equipment into the communities and the people who are impacted by digital poverty. So reusing surplus devices essentially means that new devices aren't created. And I think we all know the speed at which technology is moving. The obsolescence is now built into devices. There is a constant urge to be upgrading all the time. And generally, that sort of defaults to buying brand new devices. So the more devices that we can reuse that are perfectly functional, perfectly well performing, that is going to have a real impact on the environmental metrics that you are going to be able to use internally. So yeah, a few stats here. Carbon footprint of a refurbished device is 90% less than a brand new device, which is quite astounding. Refurbished devices are going to require 94% less raw materials than a brand new device. So that is, all through the manufacturing process and the raw minerals that need to be mined in order to create a new device. And then, yeah, refurbished devices require 95% less water consumption than brand new devices. The stats around this are really stark. We're talking about hundreds of liters of water that is required through that manufacturing process to produce a brand new device. And this is, yeah, all through the extensive kind of mining processes to run all of that equipment and what have you. So there is a lot of benefits on the environmental side, and just to make sure that we're retaining precious metals and the Earth's resources by not just constantly producing brand new devices. So, two problems that we're solving. As I just mentioned, we're really consuming tech at a very fast rate. Um, especially when you look at as well the speed at which software and AI is moving. That is only just exponentially increasing the rate of hardware production and technology. One in 40 devices sold in the UK is ever going to be reused. And a lot of times this is really because it just sits in warehouses, it sits in cupboards, it sits in storerooms. So why we exist is to really intercept that and make sure that that window of a second life for that device can really be maximized and utilized. And then, yeah, the last point there around 1,200 laptops are discarded every second in the world. I mean, again, it's just really stark. These are astounding numbers, and we've all got to work together to try and buck this trend. And the fair redistribution of these devices to people who can't afford them, so they can not be left behind, just makes complete sense. And then, Natasha, I'll let you talk about the second problem, which really dives into that sort of digital divide side of things.
Yeah, I mean that those stats that you've shared there just really melt my head, I
They're
have to
frightening,
say.
aren't they?
And we'll maybe come back to that in the case study a little bit later as well, because obviously we were part of that problem initially, and one of the reasons why Reconome and Good Things went into partnership was because we saw at Good Things Foundation that we were actually part of problem number one, and we needed to not be part of problem number one. So I think that is really important that those stats are there. And from our perspective, obviously, the digital divide is our core focus. And I touched on the idea that we want to help to remove barriers to people getting online. And it's not just about skills and confidence, that a big issue is affordability. And so, yes, we can give out free SIM cards, but we needed a solution for devices. And the reason we needed that solution is some of these stats that we've got here. So 1.6 million adults in the UK do not have a smartphone, tablet, or laptop. So they don't have any of those three items. And what's more, that's an increase of 100,000 since last year. So that number's gone up. That hasn't gone down, and that really is alarming. And the second thing that's alarming, I think, about that number is that it is about that doesn't have any of those three items. There are probably millions of people who are surviving on a smartphone alone. And you try applying for a job on a smartphone alone, it's really, really challenging. So it's not just about supporting the 1.6 million that don't have a device at all. A big part of this is also enabling people to get access to a suitable device. So that 1,200 laptops discarded every second, I'm just thinking about all those people that could really, really benefit from a laptop, but probably can't afford one, in addition to trying to keep their smartphone going. So yeah, it melts my head, that.
Mhm.
18% of adult users only go online using a smartphone. So I just touched on that. That is huge, isn't it? So it's very difficult to use forms, do work. It's very difficult to compare products and services when you're just using a smartphone. But the thing is, we do know that people with high digital engagement save £1,100 a year. Now, the difference that that can make in someone's life to be able to pocket those savings and divert their resources to where they really need them is really, really powerful. And I think next we're wanting to share Irene and Linda's story, because we've talked a bit about the social benefit. We've talked a bit about why we want to do this. But actually, rather than hearing from you or I, it's probably really helpful to bring in our first voice of the beneficiary.
I'm Irene. This is my cousin Linda, and we're best friends. When I first came here, I had no skills whatsoever. And I was very nervous and thought I won't be able to do this. Mark said to me, would you like to come and learn how to use a computer? He put me at my ease and he sat me down. He said, right, you can't break anything, so don't worry, and put me on Learn My Way. And that was the start of my digital experience. We were given a laptop and we were given data. I've had an education. I've got skills now. I never thought I'd learn to use a computer. Never thought I'd have an email address. And it's helped me with my phone because I know what I'm doing properly on my phone now. And when you ask family, they show you it once and think you know it, but you don't always know it straight away. You're learning to talk to other people as well, because I found that I was very isolated at one time. Well, not now. Coming here, it's the company. You can't be miserable in this place. It's a little family in a big world, if you know what I mean. You go home feeling happy, don't we? Yeah, we do.
Makes me feel really emotional watching these.
I
And
know.
I
I
think
always
we
need
can
I always
all.
need a minute. I always need a minute.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll get to this a bit later, but I mean, I think these are the sorts of pieces of content that you can share internally, because I think everyone sees these people who are being impacted and can relate to it. I watch that and I'm seeing my mother, and it kind of really resonates. And once you kind of get that hearts and minds piece internally going, then I think that's when the real innovation and change can happen. So yeah,
And I
hopefully that's
think
given you a minute, Natasha. Now I'll take one.
thank you, it has. And I think that what that video and what Irene and Linda are sharing there, actually it's way more than the device as well, that the device is kind of like this trigger enabler, but ultimately everything else that comes along with that. So the the company, the learning of new skills, and how proud and good we feel about ourselves when we learn something new or we achieve something that potentially we were maybe a little bit wary or fearful of before. And I think that's the value of community work and giving the devices into the communities where people from within those communities know the people that need support. They know what their needs are, and they can address those needs and give them the right tools to be able to thrive. So yeah, I mean, I just love hearing from Irene and Linda.
They're great characters.
So I guess a little bit taking a step back and looking at it from a bit of a distance now, and sharing a little bit more about our journey. So as I said, we were part of problem one, definitely. So before the pandemic, before we went into the first lockdown, Good Things Foundation hadn't done anything really in device distribution. We were very much focused on the skills, motivation, confidence support out in the community. When those communities went into lockdown in 2020, we I guess we became more acutely aware of a problem that was already there, in that people were often only accessing the internet when they were within those community settings. So whether that was they didn't have broadband connectivity at home or whether they didn't have a device, once those community centres closed, whether that was their library, a local community cafe, the GP clinic, a formal learning centre, any of those community settings that they were participating in before were closed to them. And so immediately we went into an emergency response whereby we crowdfunded and we fundraised in order to be able to get as many devices out there as possible in as short a time frame as possible. So during that pandemic period, we fundraised around 2.6 million to support 17,000 people with a free but new smartphone or tablet. So, whilst it was the right thing to do at that time, we needed to be quick, we needed to be responsive. It was costly. It cost £153 per person just to procure the device, never mind the distribution and the support that came with it. But also thinking about that problem one statement, we were contributing new carbon emissions, we were creating new carbon emissions, and that was something that we were quite conscious of very early doors. Coming out of that emergency response, we knew that at that time, the appetite to fund devices was really high and really strong, because we were all at home and we all knew that actually not being able to connect with people online is it's nothing short of a disaster. It was, if you imagine yourself not having that connection at that time, it would have been pretty challenging for you. So we knew that we were in our peak moment for fundraising at that time. At the same time, we knew that as we came out of that and more distance was created between that initial pandemic lockdown and the world starting to open up, that people would think less about that as a problem and would feel less inclined to want to give money for it. So we didn't expect to be able to fundraise £2 million again very, very easily. So we needed to think differently about how we would do it from a financial perspective, at the same time as being really conscious that from an environmental perspective, we wanted to walk the talk of our work not causing harm to the planet. That's, one of the fundamentals of charitable work, is you do not want to cause harm to people or planet. So we had a bit of a regroup and said, okay, yes, we want to carry on making devices available to people. However, we don't think we can fundraise at those levels, but we know the demand is at those levels. And B, we want to do this in a more environmentally responsible way. So this challenge is quite clear in the middle, that, the new devices was contributing thousands of tons of new CO2 emissions. And so we thought, okay, let's try out a refurbishment first approach, whereby we tackle this issue of devices being discarded prematurely, devices just never being used perhaps, and we take them in, we responsibly refurbish them or leverage them, you know, getting the best outcome possible for them, and put them back out into the communities, and working with the community organizations that we know and trust, and who we know have got the eye on where the need is, and they know where those devices could be best placed. So we came across yourselves, obviously, through a very robust, competitive tender approach, whereby we wanted to make sure that we were selecting the right partner. And, you know, Reconome obviously for us ticked all those boxes, that able to manage an end-to-end process. We don't have we're a digital inclusion charity. We don't have the accreditations or the processes or the storage or the capacity to be able to take in devices, refurbish them and put them back out there. We needed to do it with a partner, but we needed to also do it with a partner that could work at scale. We're a national charity. We support all over the UK. And we needed somebody that also understood those principles of doing good for people and planet. And Reconome are obviously a B Corp certified organization, and just get it, that idea of we can do more with the waste that we've got, and not treating it as waste, but treating it as a valuable resource that can be reused. So that was kind of like where we got to in resolving, like addressing the challenge that we had. And the results have been incredible. So we've been working together now for 2.5 to 3 years nearly, maybe. And it is a fully managed service. We'd call it a seamless integrated partnership when we're talking about what we do with potential contributing organizations. We know that we've diverted 100,000. We've got devices here, but it's probably more assets. We've diverted 100,000 assets from landfill, because we don't always get clean devices as such, but there is often value in lots of different things. I won't try and read out the kilograms of e-waste, because I'll probably stumble over my numbers, but thousands of kilograms of e-waste avoided, and tons of CO2 emissions avoided. But also, more importantly, in the first phase, we were only buying smartphones and tablets, because actually laptops were a little bit unaffordable. But now we're able to also introduce laptops, and we're also able to distribute laptops to people that need them, including Linda and Irene. So it's created positive social impact for almost 22,000 people since we switched the model and took up refurbishment first approach. And I think most importantly, the partner organizations, and there are now 87 organizations that have contributed tech to the National Device Bank, really wanting to get to 100 before Christmas. So guys, get talking to the internal colleagues you need to talk to, because we really would love to hit that milestone of 100 organizations contributing tech. But we're able to give all sorts of good social impact that reporting that goes towards ESG goals. So whether that's environmental data, whether it's the fantastic social impact that we're able to report, and it's also really, you know, tightly governed, really robust processes, really secure. So yeah, I think from a case study perspective, I feel really pleased with where we've got to from a standing start just under 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think we are racing towards 30,000 people to be impacted by the end of the year. So
Oh my word, yeah.
Let's see if we can pick and pack all of the devices that are waiting to be distributed. But yeah, we are really now starting to scale up and move pretty fast, I think.
Yeah, fantastic.
Okay, so let's just jump into a little bit of the sort of hygiene factors of all of this, and how it works from an IT asset disposal perspective. So first and foremost, our key goal is to really make this simple and seamless. So right from the get-go, we will work with, you know, whichever department is in control. Could be procurement, could be your IT team, end user services, that kind of thing. And we can certainly kind of look at your assets inventory. The likelihood is you're probably going to have a backlog of equipment that, like I mentioned earlier, is going to be, you know, sat in storerooms, or, it's just been a problem. It's generally a problem. It's something that falls down the priority list. And yeah, we can support in working through that backlog, and also really modeling out what the kind of impact is going to be. And that is really done from a point of looking at what the residual value of those devices versus what the overhead cost is going to be to go through the end-to-end process. And really, I think I would say here, at this point, we start to really ask those questions about what your refresh cycles are, the best time to be intercepting devices to make sure they've got a impactful second life is absolutely when devices are being decommissioned, and we can get them before they gather dust in storerooms. So that's really the first step is to work across departments and really try and understand what that sort of IT asset footprint looks like. And then once we kind of get through that process and go through all of the contracting service agreement, that kind of thing, we'll then really work very quickly to get secure collections set up. We'll always suggest that we can do a kind of pilot collection. This sort of gets everybody on side. It gets that sort of confidence built early doors to just kind of go through all of those initial kind of SLAs and reports, from initial reconciliation reports to the data erasure reports, and just builds confidence and trust amongst all parties to get things started, because this is generally going to be a sort of change management process, because whatever's been happening previously won't have the same kind of outcomes as what it would working with us. So then, the key thing is always going to be security, compliance, governance. InfoSec is a very sensitive area for every organization. There will be stakeholders that will want to get really deep into what those accreditations are that we have, what the data erasure process is, what standard and levels that devices are erased to, and then also an understanding of what happens when a device can't be erased. We don't want to go down this pathway, but if a device is completely non-functional, can't be erased, then we will destroy that device. We'll shred it, and then we'll make sure there's a record of it. So these are all of the sorts of questions that are going to come up from anyone in your InfoSec team or those stakeholders. As I said just before, we'll always try and model out and make sure that we've got a good understanding of what the IT footprint is of an organization. And the idea here is to always make this cost neutral. So there isn't any kind of overhead or service charges, because we can resell a portion of the devices to cover that. And then, whatever's left over there, whether it be the value of the devices or devices we can directly distribute, that is where we create the impact and make it cost neutral for the donating organization, and then most importantly cost neutral for the people who receive the devices via the digital inclusion hubs and the charities. So just to be clear, everyone ends up with a free device that they can get connected and get online. And then the end bit that we keep talking about is really where all the magic happens, making sure that we're reporting on everything that has happened from an environmental benefit perspective, but also from the social benefit that is created as well. We will provide really detailed reporting, all of those stories and narratives that you'll be able to associate your organization to. And we're also really agile here. We like to work very closely with organizations if they need specific case studies or specific reporting. We want you to go out and shout about the process and journey that you've been on with us. And we'll work really closely with across your departments and with the right stakeholders to make sure that you get those results and those data points that you can go and shout about it. And then there's just a quick point here on the DSIT charter. So there's been a lot of work over the summer. It's actually been a real milestone year for digital inclusion, where there is now recognition from the national government. There is a digital inclusion action plan. And then following that, there was some work with DSIT that both Natasha and I contributed to. and we're really now encouraging organisations to sign up to that charter. So I'll throw to you, Natasha, to give a bit more detail on that. And I know it's something you're really passionate about.
Yes, so one of the things that we are really conscious of is that Good Things Foundation and the National Device Bank cannot solve this problem alone. 1.6 million adults without a smartphone, tablet, and laptop. That would take us. We've done 20,000 in 3 years. That's not even scratching the surface, is it? So we need more organizations to be thinking about this, and we need more organizations to be working with their communities to figure out how to get devices back into the communities. So this charter isn't about the National Device Bank per se. That's one solution, but the charter was more about us advocating for reuse to be considered before recycling. And we do a lot of advocacy to the government and to all cross-party advocacy to say, these are the issues that we think need resolving. And obviously, once we'd got into this game of refurbishing devices for reuse, we wanted more people to be doing it. We want more organisations to be considering it. And so when the government launched the Digital Inclusion Action Plan, they got pledges from different organisations. And one of the pledges was for Deloitte, Vodafone 3, Good Things Foundation, and DCIT to work together to create this charter, which is effectively the first government-backed charter promoting reuse for social good. So what the charter is asking organisations to do is to think about where their tech ends up once it's reached the end of corporate life. And they're encouraging them to consider making a commitment for that tech to be reused for social good wherever feasible. And so the charter asks them to say, yes, let's do it. So you become a signatory and you sign up and say, we're going to have a good go at this. And then every 6 months, DCIT are asking for some data to be shared back with them about progress being made. So it's not necessarily even saying we've got a target of X number of devices or whatever. It's too soon for that. This early stage is more about organisations just saying, do you know what? We're going to have a look at this. We're going to seriously consider it. And more than that, we'll commit to considering it and commit to trying to do something about it. And so we're really, really happy that DCIT have moved forward with this, because that's one of when we think about changing the system, we don't want to just put a band-aid on it and go, here, we've given out 20,000 devices. We want things to change, fundamentally change in society. And so if through this charter, as it gains momentum, as it becomes more out there in the public domain, we're hopeful that more organisations will take a look at it and say, yeah, actually, I think that instead of sending our stuff off for recycling, we could consider whether or not there was a second life for it before that. And then it's up to them to figure out how to do it. And we've created a playbook that sits alongside it that helps people to think about all of the different considerations that they might need to take in order to be able to set up a reuse scheme or embed reuse into their IT asset management approach. That's a mouthful, isn't it?
It is.
But essentially, that's what it is. This charter says we'll commit to doing something about this and just crack on and do it, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, I mean, I think it's really important that this topic just keeps rising up the agenda. And, if we can get ahead of steam here, where people are getting behind what we're trying to do, and, it's starting to resonate with more organizations, then that would be fantastic. And, I think you've seen some of the numbers that we've shared. If every organization was pledging, surplus devices to be used for digital inclusion purposes, then I'm not going to say we wouldn't have a digital inclusion problem, because I don't think it's ever solvable. It's always going to change and evolve. But we would certainly be a lot closer to supporting those millions of people who unfortunately can't afford a device or can't get connected. So yeah, that is definitely something to take internally and read through and see if it's something that you can get someone to sign at your organization to pledge support. So that sort of leads on to the next slide, really, the sort of practical application of this, and where you're going to start, especially if you're working in ESG. Where are you going to start here on how you can, fact find and become that internal champion at your organization to change what you're doing when it comes down to IT asset disposal. So pretty obvious, but obviously the first thing you're going to do is find out what's happening already with surplus equipment. And worst case, it may just be all being recycled and shredded, or it may just being stored until it's kind of too old to be reusable. So definitely start asking questions with procurement teams, because they're usually the ones that are at the forefront of bringing new devices in, or when there's refresh projects. So those questions can be asked then, like, well, what are we doing with the equipment that we're refreshing? Obviously IT teams, but what I would say is IT teams are very under-resourced generally. There's that speed of technology thing. There is way more bigger priorities than what's happening with the old equipment. It's like kind of collateral damage from that speed at which everything moves. But definitely, if you can make friends in your IT team to find out what's going on, absolutely a good port of call. And then you should get friendly with the infosec people as well, to make sure that you're sharing the process and how it's accredited, with all of the right processes when it comes down to data erasure standards, and also ask what their requirements are, and then you can kind of play those back, and make sure they're being met and kind of get ahead of the game. And then I don't think there's anyone in sustainability who wouldn't be behind this, but certainly sharing with them exactly what data is going to be received back on the environmental side to be used with Scope 3, and then all of that wonderful qualitative data and feedback that you're going to get to be associated with the stories and narratives of the people who are going to be impacted. So yeah, it's really about just creating a bit of an internal map, I think, about what's happening right now, and then we would always be there to support on any questions. You need to pull us into calls with certain departments if they've got specific areas where they need more information. We will be there to always help to kind of map that out internally. And I'd like to say we've got pretty good at that. We're able to navigate some really tricky situations where there is kind of hard nose initially, but then once we again build that confidence and trust, we tend to always get to a point where we can make a change and do something innovative and transform the way that you're dealing with IT asset disposal. So yeah, I mean, this sort of next section on how to influence, I think, once you've got that map, and you've got these sort of metrics and case studies and these pieces of content from the people who are being impacted, it starts to become really powerful on how how you're going to build that sort of coalition, and how you're going to win hearts and minds. And I think when you show some of these sorts of videos of the people who are being impacted, it's I mean, it gives me goosebumps kind of watching them, and that's the kind of impact that we want you to take internally, and find other influencers and other internal champions who can drive this forward. So yeah, ultimately, why does it resonate? Well, the cost neutral point is always good. That helps with finance teams if we can make sure that portions of devices can be resold to cover those costs. That sort of tangible social environmental reporting we've spoken about. The human stories, huge influencing factor, I think. And then I think a big part, and this is where the decent charter comes in, is that you can be a leader in your industry. You can set the tone, and it tends to sort of work like dominoes after that as well. So if you can be one of those first influencers within your industry, not just internally, then I think that can have a hugely beneficial effect on your customers and the way that you're perceived. So there's a real kind of brand recognition piece in there as well. So just to quickly touch on a case study with an organization called DSP that Reconome has worked directly with. And the reason why we've kind of got this in here is that, obviously our leading kind of priority is feeding the National Device Bank. The problem within the UK for digital inclusion is huge. You've got millions of people who aren't connected to the internet, millions of people don't have devices, and this is the 6th largest economy in the world. So you can imagine what this looks like when you go outside of the UK, where in global South countries, you've got hundreds of millions of children who haven't got access to technology in the classroom. So one thing at a time, we do have to continue trying to solve this in the UK, working out what this model is, an algorithmic approach basically to making sure that we're maximizing surplus equipment. But this is just a very quick story on an organization we work with called DSP. They are a kind of infrastructure network data center organization. They came to us and they were decommissioning some of their data centers, as well as making other acquisitions in their industry where surplus laptops were becoming available. They already work with an organization called Project Hara, and that supports children and families in Ethiopia who suffer from cleft palate. So I'm sure everyone has seen those videos and documentaries. Again, it's an emotional thing to watch, and the people on the front line there are really struggling with technology and being able to leverage that to be able to further their work. So we went through this whole end-to-end process that we've been talking about with DSP. As you can imagine, server equipment can't be directly distributed to support that cause, but we were able to kind of monetize that equipment, create a pot of proceeds, and then we worked directly with the people on the front line in Ethiopia, and we worked out exactly what sort of devices were going to enable their staff and enable them to do their work better and to be able to impact more people. And this could be anything from better connection in their offices, right the way through to using tablets to be able to go and sort of perform questionnaires and things like that with the families. So you can see here that what would have just been a recycling project, we've now repurposed 70% of those devices and all of that infrastructure equipment, huge amounts of e-waste avoided. And yeah, most importantly, we're able to do something a bit more creative with a charity that wasn't in the UK. So, we want you to support the National Device Bank, but if you're already associated with another charity, then we can certainly work together to sort of split where that impact goes. That would be our perfect model, that you support the National Device Bank, and then if you've got something that a cause, a charitable endeavor that you're already working with, you can have full control over that as well, and make sure you're ticking those boxes. So yeah, this is just a little picture here of some of the tech that we supplied to those staff in Ethiopia, and there's a fantastic video there, which I'm not going to show today, of them discussing just how valuable this equipment was to them. So real world impact then. Let's get back to the National Device Bank and talk about all the amazing work that's been done there. Natasha, I'll throw you over to this lovely slide. Everyone likes maps and infographics.
Everyone loves a map, and actually, it's one of the questions we get asked a lot. Being a national solution, is where are the devices going, and are they going to the region that we're in? Because obviously everyone wants to know, never mind UK, Help UK, is my community being supported? So yeah, people do like this map because it shows the breadth of where we've managed to get devices distributed, and every region of the UK has received devices. But of course, we would still want more because we always have a huge amount more demand than we have supply. So we're we're still looking at scaling and growing and how we can get more devices to more areas of the UK. But over 640 community organisations have received devices. The in-kind benefit, you mentioned there about leveraging the servers to get the right kind of devices for Project Hara. And, the in-kind benefit that has been generated from the assets contributed is over 2 million. Now, what that means, and this is really important for a charity, what that means is we've been able to cover the running costs of the service, as well as use any surplus funds to procure additional refurbished devices. And that in-kind benefit is invaluable to us, because one of the first things that when a charity is setting up a service is thinking about how we're going to fund it. And so we've got this almost self-sustaining business model that has enabled us to really, move forward at quite a pace that we probably wouldn't have been able to do had we have had to go out and say, could you lend us £2 million to do this thing? It would not have got off the ground. So that feels really positive. And you can see the benefits here. 83% feel happier, 85% feel healthier, and 82% feel better off after receiving digital inclusion support. It is so vital when you're considering social impact and social benefit.
Completely agree. So yeah, we'll share these slides afterwards so you can read through these in a bit more detail. But there's lots of stories as well on the Good Things Foundation website. But yeah, I mean, again, these are great pieces of content to take internally and say, look what we could be a part of. Look at the impact this is having on people that are in our communities.
Yeah. And Ryan, I think the message to take from Ryan here, it's not just a laptop, he wants to see, he wants his kids to see what's possible with determination and the right support. And so generally speaking, the point I want people to take from this is that it's not just the individual that receives the devices. This supports households, families. It's broader, wider than that. The reach is always much, much deeper and stronger than you first think by giving one individual a device.
Yeah, totally agree. So checklist, this will be sent over to you on the slide, but yeah, find out where your IT is going. Let's work together to see what we can unblock there and how we can transition and change to a process like this. Ask, is reuse an option before recycling? If we're receiving rebates for equipment, what is the value of that rebate to us? Generally, as I said before, it's off the P&L. So surely generating benefit, generating ESG data is going to be a lot more valuable than what that rebate is. And then, yeah, explore partnerships that combine this process. It may well be that you have an existing contract. If you're a really large enterprise, you have an existing contract with a huge IT asset disposal company. Well, we can integrate with them. We can still take the reusable devices and work alongside them as well. We're very agile and we're very versatile when it comes down to how we can get devices into people's hands who need them. So we're going to leave before the Q&A with a final video, and yeah, I'm going to just take a breath and hit the button.
All I need to say is thank you for everything you guys doing for us. I'm in London more than 4 years now. I was living with my parents, and this problem came, and I came homeless. It's bad. It's bad, and I'm happy to be with you guys today.
So for someone like Paulie, who we were able to help today with a device and a SIM card, and Paulie has got a number of talents that she would like to explore.
I'm a chef. I can say that I'm good on what I want to do. I'm a hard worker. I want to have it as well, Instagram, where I'm posting everything I'm doing, the foods, explain my days, everything. I have the motivation I was expecting to have. I feel good. I'm happy on my phone. When I talk to my children, all the problem I have is disappear.
Fantastic. Who wouldn't want to be a part of helping all these people? Thank you for we really appreciate that what makes us get up in the morning, what we're passionate about, what we've got fires in our belly about, is starting to resonate with you, and we will do all we can to support you going on this journey to influence your internal stakeholders to do something different. Okay. Well, I think we can leave it there unless anyone's got a last minute question that they want to throw in before we finish it up. But it'd be great to finish on time. But thank you for everyone that's attended. We really appreciate it. And we're absolutely here for you if you've got any other questions once you've digested everything we've gone through. And yeah, we really care about what we do. I think that is the start of transition, and the start of innovation is when you care about something and you're passionate about something. And we really want to utilize your care and passion if this is something that's resonating. So reach out, and we will jump on any calls with any of your departments or any of your stakeholders to run through any details. So thank you again.
Thank you.